Shalom, welcome. I'm Rabbi Scott with Beth Yeshua Messianic Synagogue. Welcome to our home. I am in my home during this midweek Torah study. We do these from our home. As you can see in the background is my daughter Ryan, who is waving to you right now. So that's what it means to be home. So that's what we have for you today. This is our midweek Torah study, wherein we go through the Torah parsha by parsha. And just discuss it with you. If you are interested in dialogue and discussion and comment, by all means, please post your comments below, or you can reach out to me via email. My email address is included in the description of the video below. If you are interested, you're welcome to subscribe to our channel. If you are interested, you're welcome to subscribe to our channel because if you subscribe, then you will be notified when we have videos. And we submit and broadcast all of our services for Shabbat and so forth on our YouTube channel. And so you could be given notifications to join us there. And so that might be a nice thing. If you are interested in supporting this ministry, you will find a link to support this ministry below. We're very grateful for all of you that do support this ministry and just appreciate you. We are fully supported by donors from our audience. So if you live in Fort Myers and you would like to join us for worship and fellowship, we would love to have you. We are having in-person services, 11 a.m. on Shabbat. Reach out to us for directions if you like, and you can join us. Would love to see you. All right, without further delay, I think that covers it. I'm going to go ahead and get started. This week is Parshat 26, Shmini, 8th, the 8th day, Vayikra, from Leviticus chapter 9 through chapter 11. And so let's begin. On the 8th day, the dedication of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, Aaron, his sons, and the entire nation bring various offerings as commanded by Moses. Aaron and Moses bless the nation. Adonai allows the Jewish people of Israel, to sense his presence after they complete the Mishkan and draw closer to him through the mitzvot. Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, innovate an original offering that was not commanded by Adonai. A fire comes out from before Adonai and consumes them, stressing the need to perform the commandments only as Moses directs. Moses consoles Aaron, who grieves in silence. Moses directs the Kohanim, the priests, as to their behavior during the mourning period, and warns them that they must not drink intoxicating beverages before serving in the Mishkan. There was some question as to whether or not they were drinking something fermented or alcoholic. And that may have been an indication of why Nadav and Avihu did what they did. In any case, the Torah lists two characteristics of the kosher animal. It has split hooves, and it chews or regurgitates its cud, its food. The Torah specifies by name those non-kosher animals which have only one of these two signs. A kosher fish has fins and easily removable scales. All birds not included in the list of forbidden families are permitted. The Torah forbids all types of insects except for 4 species of locusts. Details are given for the purification process after coming in contact with ritually impure species, and the people of Israel are commanded to live separate and holy lives just like Adonai. That's the summary of the Parshat this week. And that comes from Or Samech, which we recommend for some of their teaching materials. It's nice to begin with a summary. It just helps you get your bearings on the Parshat very, very quickly. Okay, let's begin this week. I want to take a look at some of the things that happen here. It's the 8th day. Aaron and his sons officially begin their duties ministering the sacrifices, the care of the Mishkan, of the lamp, the menorah, the incense, and the bread, and so forth. This day is also Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and on this day, Adonai says, this is what Adonai has ordered you to do, so that the glory of Adonai will appear to you. So we have the interest in the glory of Adonai appearing to the people and the confidence thereof. Moses and Aaron go into the Mishkan and intercede for all of Israel into the tabernacle. Must be said that this is all in recent memory of the golden calf episode. That is, that 1 year ago we had the golden calf episode. Now, after the golden calf, there's a desire to kind of get it right and to do it right. All right. Jewish tradition is that the Torah was given to Israel as an engagement between a chassan and a kala, bridegroom and bride. Rosh Chodesh Nisan would be the dedication ceremony, as in the Mishkan and the priests was the wedding day. This is the wedding day of Israel and Adonai. Okay, that's what's happening here. And then on this day, from Vayikra 10, Leviticus 10, verse 10, Nadav, or actually looks like it's verse 1, from chapter 10. Nadav and Avihu, sons of Aaron, each took his censer, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and offered unauthorized fire from before Adonai, something he had not ordered them to do. At this, fire came forth from the presence of Adonai and consumed them, so they died in the presence of Adonai. What just happened here? We're very careful. I thought we were being very careful, and then now we've apparently Nadav and Avihu went outside the bounds of what was acceptable to Adonai, and Adonai consumed them with fire and judgment. Moses says to Aaron, from verse 3, this is what Adonai said, through those who are near me I will be consecrated, and before all the people I will be glorified. And at this it says in the text, Aaron kept silent. Moses called Mishael and Elzaphan, sons of Uzziel, Aaron's uncle, and told them, come here and carry your cousins away from in front of the sanctuary to a place outside the camp. They approached and carried them in their tunics out of the camp as Moses had said. All right, credit for this part of the teaching goes to Rabbi David Foreman, who has presented this teaching on Nadav and Avihu. So I want to give credit here for that. So what just happened? This all happened on the 8th day. There were 7 days of dedication of the new Mishkan. On the 8th day, culminating in the moment of that dedication, is when this tragedy struck. So we've got that. Number 2. The idea of a blessing. Aaron picked up his hands and blessed the people, and after that, Moses and Aaron together blessed the people. Number 3, the sin itself of Nadav and Avihu, the children of Aaron. They each took fire pans, they put fire in the pans, they put incense on it, and they brought it before Adonai, and it's called a strange fire or a foreign fire. They were not commanded to bring it. Asher lotziva otam. They were not commanded to bring. Where else in the Torah do we have a sin that's characterized with these two verbs, vayichu, vayitnu, taking and giving? What we have is vayichu b'nei vayichu b'nei Aaron, Nadav va'avihu, the children of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, ishmachtato, each took pans, vayitnu, put fire in the pans. And so here's where we have these words, vayichu and vayitnu, taking and giving. When do we have this sin repeated, characterized by something as taking and giving, something that Adonai did not command them to do, asher lotziva otam? The other sin that we are speaking, the other event that we are speaking about in the Torah also has to do with consuming, vetochal, which of course means to eat. Vayamutu lifnei Hashem, the children of Aaron died before Adonai. The other sin, the other event we're talking about has to do with dying. After the children of Aaron die, their brothers are told to come into the Mishkan and carry out the corpses of the deceased. When they are told to do so, they are told to carry them out in their clothes. Vayasom bakuto notam. This particular word used to describe their clothes. Kutanotam. Where else is the kutonet used in the aftermath of a sin? Where do we see that word again to describe clothes? And then we also have this, that they're told to be taken out of the camp. And where again do we have an episode where somebody was taken out of the camp? Just before this episode, we have 7 days of waiting until the 8th day. Let's start with that as a clue, and let's go back to creation. At creation, we had 7 days, and then the 8th day, the 7th day was the Shabbat of creation, and then the first day following that would have been the 8th day. And it kind of startles you when you read this episode, where they were supposed to begin this on the 8th day, 7 days of waiting until the Mishkan was dedicated. They were to begin their ministry, their service, on the 8th day. The Torah records that sin right after it talks about the Shabbat in the week of creation. That is the sin of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's almost as if the text is presenting this as another day, a day in which the people eat that which they were commanded not to eat from. That is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil after creation. So we have this 8th day, but the 8th day in creation is like a day of sin. Indeed, that is the language of the verse. Hamim ha'etz asher tzuitcha levilti achal mimenu achalta. Have you indeed eaten from the tree which I commanded you not to eat? God says. And look at the verbs that describe the sin itself. Vayitchach mipiro vetochal vatiten gam laisha ima vayochal. She took from its fruit and she ate. She gave it to her husband and he ate too. So we have this eating. Vayitchach, taking, vatiten, giving, and vatchochal, consuming or eating. In the current parsha, it's Nadav and Avihu were themselves consumed. Death, of course, comes to the children of Aaron, but death also came to the children of men after the episode of the tree of the knowledge, in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil story. Adonai promises that the day that you eat from the tree of knowledge, you will die. You don't actually die, but you'll become mortal so that you'll become people that do die. Death follows in the wake of each sin, and of course exile follows as well, being taken outside the camp. Do you see the parallel? We sinned that day, and the wages of sin is death, and the consequence for that was to be expelled from the garden. In the episode of Nadav and Avihu, the camp is the camp of Israel, which is centered around the Mishkan. In the first case, of course, the camp was the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve wearing new clothes, which were given to them by Adonai himself, like a kutanot, are told that they must leave the garden never to return. This is the very next thing. It happens immediately in the text. In the story of the tree of knowledge, Adonai had just made a world for us, a whole environment for the benefit of people, a universe, a solar system, a planet, all these things that mankind would call home, but on the 8th day something went wrong. In this week's Parsha, mankind on this planet again, he makes a home for Adonai, a place that Adonai would call home in our world by his design, in our planet. So we have the Garden of Eden, which was constructed according to his design, and we have the Mishkan, which was constructed according to his design. First was constructed by him, the second was constructed by us. After building this sort of domain for Adonai, we rested for 7 days, but on the 8th day something went wrong. And this is kind of one of the conclusions where you can go with this this comparison between the Garden of Eden and the Mishkan, or between the sin of taking from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the sin of Nadav and Avihu. And that is this, that whenever you're in proximity with Adonai, there's a temptation that arises, a great temptation to appropriate that space as your own, and to consider that you have all rights and authority and privilege there. And that's essentially one of the ways to look at the episode of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We took from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was something reserved unto Adonai. It was not for us at that time. I personally believe that at some point it was going to be for us, but we don't know at this time. So, but I believe that it was for us, because why would Adonai keep from us the knowledge of good and evil? It had a purpose, but it wasn't to be shared with us at that time. And so we have this sense in which the similarity here with Nadav and Avihu. What did they do? Basically, what you have is the Mishkan, and in the Mishkan are two rooms, and you've got a holy place and you've got a most holy place. In the most holy place is the ark, and inside the ark is the tablets and the jar of manna and the staff, the budded staff. But over that is the kaparet and the covering, and on the covering are the cheruvim, the two angelic beings forming a seat for the presence of Adonai himself. And so what we see is that Nadav and Avihu take fire pans, and, well, let me back up here. The presence of Adonai was represented by smoke in the holy place. In other words, you had, when you went in there, it was like the smoke from incense, thick, and the cloud of glory was Adonai. Nadav and Avihu went and took a fire pan and filled it with incense and went into that most holy place, into the presence of Adonai. There, the smoke from their fire would have mingled and commingled with the smoke from Adonai, the presence of Adonai. And this is what I'm speaking of, is this idea that there's this sense in which, when you're in proximity with the glory of Adonai, to take privileges and advantage of that, to say that we kind of want to do it our own way. We're going to kind of become like Adonai, and we want the connection and the closeness with Adonai, but we want to cling to him and be like him. But in a sense, what we do is we kind of take over the scenario, we take over the environment, and we have a tendency to run it our own way. One of the ways that this is manifested is in the area of spiritual gifts. I believe that there are spiritual gifts that are alive and well and active on the earth today. There are some people who have gifts of prophecy and of healing and of words and understanding. There are those who are given dreams and visions. But what I see happening, and what I have seen happening, is that when people are in proximity with Adonai, sometimes they run away with themselves, and they get a little full of themselves, and they begin to declare and proclaim on their own veracity, the same way that Adam and Eve declared, in a sense, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, when Eve saw that it was good for food and made somebody wise. She kind of declared that, and it became a matter of her consideration. And when we come into that place, then there are certainly there's certainly boundaries that Adonai has reserved unto himself. When you come into the proximity of Adonai in a powerful way, there are still boundaries that are reserved unto Adonai, and you have to maintain those. And if you do not, it's at your peril. Adonai will not share his glory with another. The presence of Adonai, the smoke, was not to be commingled with this strange fire that Nadav and Avihu brought into that place. It's interesting that the Garden of Eden is a discussion in boundaries. It is a discussion in having kind of a contained space. Likewise, the Mishkan is a discussion of boundaries, having contained spaces wherein the presence of Adonai dwells, and there's restrictions and regulations on that. There are definitions and restrictions that Adonai has indeed and absolutely placed upon our world. It is not for us to redefine everything. Our temptation in this world is to use grace and love and forgiveness as theological and doctrinal imperatives to redefine the boundaries of humanity. But what we fail to realize is that by doing so, we are redefining the order of creation, and that is not our prerogative. It's almost as if we think that because we understand grace, love, and forgiveness, and we understand acceptance, and we understand that to be the character of Adonai, we understand his compassion and his kindness, that we use that argument of compassion and kindness, we use that as the basis for a reorganization of creation. We use that as our basis to abandon the created order of things and redefine the created order of things. In our society, many have sought to redefine sexuality. And I'm not speaking of sexual behavior. Sexual behavior is actually quite simple. That can be described as deviance or described as sin, basically, for the wrong kinds of sexual behavior. That's actually a fairly straightforward discussion. But this shouldn't startle us. But what I want to address specifically is the current idea of that believers in Adonai, people who believe in Adonai, the creator of the universe, but reserve the right to redefine sexuality in terms that are based on love, acceptance, forgiveness, kindness, compassion. And I'd like to spend a moment on this, but this is the modern sort of place that we've ended up in our society, and I think we need to take a pause and understand that that this is specifically a flaw or an error of the believers in Adonai. In other words, I wouldn't be surprised for the world to redefine things. I think it was the Nazi Party back in the 20s tried to institute a 10-day work week, working 10 days, and it failed, you know. But that doesn't surprise me that the world, the non-believing world, would want to redefine the boundaries of humanity as instituted by God. But what does alarm me that those in the kingdom of Adonai, what does alarm me is that those in the kingdom of Adonai, those who believe in Adonai and who believe in his word, also wanting to redefine these boundaries. And this is a grave misstep in the kingdom during these days. And we saw what happened with Nadav and Avihu when they tried to redefine the boundaries in the presence of Adonai, and they were judged very harshly for that. It says fire came out from Adonai and consumed them. And so this is what we see. All right, Leviticus chapter 10, Vayikra chapter 10, verse 16. Moses carefully investigated what had happened to the goat of the sin offering and discovered that it had been burned up. He became angry with Eleazar and Itamar, the remaining sons of Aaron, and asked, "Why didn't you eat the sin offering in the area of the sanctuary, since it is especially holy?" He gave it to you to take away the guilt of the community, to make atonement for them before Adonai. Look, its blood wasn't brought into the sanctuary. You should have eaten it there, in the sanctuary, as I ordered. Aaron answered Moshe, "Even though they offered the sin offering and burnt offering today, things like these have happened to me. If I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have pleased Adonai?" On hearing this reply, Moses was satisfied. Okay, what is happening here? When you read this, it's perplexing. So we have to kind of tear it apart to understand what's happening here. And one of the ways to understand this is from the perspective of the Ola offering and the Chatat offering. These two offerings. Basically, the Ola offering is what we call the burnt offering. It's when you give everything up. Everything is burned up. Everything that's offered up is burned up except for the skin. The Chatat offering is a different offering. The Chatat is the sin offering. It's also burned up, but a portion of it is eaten by the priests. Remember the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? That was the food of Adonai, and we ate of that tree. She took it and ate and offered it to Adam, and he ate. That was mankind taking and eating of Adonai. The Chatat offering is a giving of mankind to be eaten by the priests who are representatives of Adonai. It's the chatat offering is taking of what is mine and giving it to him to eat. The Ola offering is different. The Ola offering is taking something that is all mine, the thing that is all mine, and giving it all away. I've got nothing left over after the Ola offering. Think in terms of surrendering all, of being left alone with nothing. Think in terms of a father and mother who have lost their son during wartime, a foreign soldier on foreign soil. They're abandoned. They're alone. They're left. They've given up everything. How did Aaron respond to when Adonai took his two oldest sons? Remember the Akedah. Abraham was willing to offer up his son, and Isaac did not protest. Right? Neither Abraham nor Isaac protested. In fact, at another time we have an occasion where Adonai announces something to Abraham, and Abraham negotiates with him, bargains with him. Adonai declares that he's going to destroy the city, Sodom, and Abraham argues with him, or doesn't argue with him, but negotiates with him. What if 50 are found righteous? What if 40 are found righteous? What negotiation did Abraham offer up when Adonai asked him to sacrifice his son, his only son whom he loved? The answer is Abraham didn't offer up any negotiation. He was silent. You see, Aaron was silent here. Silence is the voice of the Ola. Silence is giving Adonai everything, even my objections and complaints. In the Akedah, both Abraham and Isaac were silent. Neither objected. We have this sense that they're walking up the hill and up the mountain. And it says this in the Hebrew, it's interesting the way it says it. It says that they were talking, and it says Isaac was talking to his father, and he said. And it's like, it's that he said and he said. And it brings emphasis to that. It's like the interruption. It's like wait a minute, he interrupted himself. Wait a minute, I see the fire in the wood, where is the lamb? And Abraham says, Adonai will provide himself for the sacrifice. So, and the response to that was silence, and beginning to realize what was happening, beginning to realize what was going to happen. What was Isaac's response? It was silence. It's the Ola offering. After realizing what was happening, responding to Adonai, what was Abraham's response? It was silence. Again, silence is the voice of the Ola. Silence is giving Adonai everything, even my objections and my complaints. The response that Aaron had to the taking of Nadav and Avihu was silence. He could not then cross over into the role of the high priest and then take up the sin offering. In other words, Aaron would have had to have taken up the sin offering, the chatat offering, and he would have had to have eaten some of the chatat offering in order to fulfill his role as the high priest, because that's how we do the chatat. But he could not do that. He couldn't cross over into that role and take that up. And when he explained that to Moses, we have this thing where Moses, on hearing this reply, Moses was satisfied. When is another time when someone was silent when they lost their child? When is another time in the Tanakh, in the Bible, when someone was silent when they gave up their child? When Yeshua was on the execution stake, Adonai was silent. He was silent even to Yeshua, who cried out, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani? My God, why have you forsaken me? Adonai was silent even to Yeshua, we can presume. Why was Adonai silent? Because Adonai had given Yeshua up as an Ola offering. Behold the Lamb who takes away the sin of the world, and yet Yeshua was the chatat offering too. Yeshua was the sin. This is my body, take and eat, he said at the Seder. Again, similar to the priest taking the sin offering and eating it. Aaron says, I lost my children today. I've given them up as an Ola offering. How can I then turn and receive the food of the atonement? And this is understandable to Moses. It is acceptable because it illustrates that Aaron was human. He lost his children that day. He performed an unwilling Ola sacrifice. Everything was sacrificed. The Ola was entirely given up. I believe that this illustrates the contrasts, that Adonai was able to offer up his son entirely for sin to his death, but that Adonai is still able to make atonement through the offering of Yeshua, because Yeshua is the resurrection and the life. Aaron was not the resurrection and the life, and neither was Isaac. Isaac could have been a sacrifice for an atonement, and he would have been a sacrifice for an atonement, but it would not have been an eternal atonement the way Yeshua was the sacrifice for eternal atonement. But we have this, that Yeshua says, I am the resurrection and the life. Nadav and Avihu were not going to be the resurrection and the life, and so we have the silence of Aaron as an answer. Isaac was not going to be the resurrection and the life, and so what did Adonai do? He provided a ram, which is a pointer to Yeshua. The atonement of the high priest was in Aaron to make, but not the resurrection and the life. See, we have atonement in the sacrifice, we have atonement in the Yom Kippur, we have atonement in the Chatat offering, but we don't have the resurrection and the life. The resurrection and the life require permanent, eternal atonement, and that's what we have in Yeshua. We have this statement over and over in the text. This is the way you shall make atonement for the people of Israel. Make no mistake, the high priest can make an atonement, but the atonement of the high priest cannot bring a resurrection and life. Only Yeshua could say, I am the resurrection and the life. As we read in Hebrews, he has become our new high priest of the new covenant. Yeshua is the atonement, and Yeshua is the resurrection and the life. Adam and Eve died in their skins, in their clothes. Nadav and Avihu died in their clothes. Yeshua is the atonement, first in the lamb of the Ola offering, and then in the lamb of the covering, the skins, and in the lamb of atonement, and finally in the lamb of the sin offering, for he has taken away our transgressions and removed our iniquities. From Isaiah 53, in fact, verse 6, it was our diseases he bore, our pains which he suffered, yet we regarded him as punished, stricken, and afflicted by God. When else do we see somebody stricken and afflicted by God, regarded as punished? And yet, what was the answer of Aaron? It was silence to his sons. Verse 5, he was wounded because of our crimes, crushed because of our sins. The disciplining that makes us whole fell on him, and by his bruises we are healed. We all like sheep went astray, we turned each one to his own way, yet Adonai laid on him the guilt of all of us. Though mistreated, he was submissive. He did not open his mouth. Like a lamb led to be slaughtered, like a sheep silent before its shearers, he did not open his mouth. Indeed, and this is what we see in the text from Isaiah 53, and then just a little ways further, let me just pull it up for you real quick here. It pleased Adonai to bruise him, to cause him to suffer. If he makes his soul a guilt offering, he will see his offspring, he will prolong his days, and the will of Adonai will succeed by his hand. And this is what it is. It says in verse 12, I will give him a portion with the great. He will divide the spoil with the mighty. He has poured out his soul to death, for he is counted with transgressors. He bore the sin of many and interceded for the transgressors. But what does it say in the next line? Sing, O barren one who has not given birth. Burst into singing and shout, for you who have not travailed, for more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married one. A reference to Yeshua and the ones that he brought along with him to resurrection and life. So this is what we see, is the silence of Aaron speaking to the silence of a father giving up a son. And yet what we have is we have the triumph and the victory of the eighth day of Yeshua. The eighth day of Yeshua was the day of resurrection and life, when he arose out of the rocky, stony tomb and triumphed over sin and death, and by this has earned his place at the right hand of the Father, and has earned that all authority is given unto him. And this is our salvation. This is our Yeshua HaMashiach. That concludes our discussion tonight. Again, if you would like to join us for this, if you would like to comment, there is an email address in the description below. If you would like to make any comments below, I'll try to respond to those as well. And if you have any questions, please let me know. May Adonai bless you this week, and may he go with you and bring favor upon you. Shalom, shalom.